Imagine standing trial, alone, no lawyer, no defense, the room cold, eyes judging you. And then a man in uniform walks in, not just any man, a colonel, and he sits right next to you. This wasn't just any courtroom. It was a small, dimly lit military tribunal tucked away on the outskirts of a classified base. No press, no cameras, just four cold walls, a flag, and the echo of heavy boots. It was the kind of place where stories disappear and people become files. At the center of the room sat a young soldier, barely 22, his uniform wrinkled, his boots scuffed, hands cuffed, shoulders hunched, accused of betraying the nation he once proudly swore to serve. The charge? Treason, the kind that leaves no second chance. But what stood out wasn't just the severity of the accusation. It was the silence surrounding it. No defense attorney, no advocate, not even a senior officer to speak for him. He had requested legal aid, denied. He asked for time, refused. He was being tried by a system that had already made up its mind. His family had been kept uninformed. His calls had been monitored. The witnesses, all from the prosecution. It was a one-sided war being fought inside a courtroom. And he, the accused, had no weapon but his own breath. Minutes passed like hours. The officers on the bench flipped through papers, barely making eye contact. His name was called, but it might as well have been a sentence. And then, without warning, the courtroom door creaked open. Everyone turned. The door didn't just open, it commanded attention. In stepped a tall figure in full military uniform, polished boots striking the floor with controlled force. His medals gleamed under the flickering ceiling light, but it was his face that silenced the room. Stern, composed, familiar. A high-ranking colonel, a man whose reputation preceded him, whose name was spoken in corridors with both respect and fear. The guards froze. The judge glanced up, puzzled. He wasn't on any list. No one had summoned him. No one had expected him. Without a word, the colonel walked slowly, deliberately, across the room, each step echoing like a drumbeat of resistance. The young soldier dared not look up, unsure if this was his rescuer or his executioner. And then, something no one could have predicted happened. The colonel pulled out a chair, not from the audience, not from the prosecution's table, but from beside the defendant. He sat, right next to the accused, not above him, not in front of him, with him. Side by side, he took off his cap, placed it gently on the table, and looked straight at the tribunal. His eyes didn't blink. His message didn't need words. He's not alone anymore. The courtroom buzzed with confusion. Whispers rose like smoke. Who gave him permission? Why is he here? But no one moved, because deep down, they all knew rank can be obeyed, but respect is commanded. And in that moment, the dynamic shifted. The trial was no longer a formality. It had become a standoff between protocol and principle, between silence and conscience. For a few moments, no one said a word. The tribunal was frozen, caught between the rigid code of military conduct and the undeniable authority of the man who had justified it. Then, the colonel finally spoke, calm, controlled, but each word landed like a hammer. I will represent this soldier. A stunned silence followed. One of the judges leaned forward, voice low, but laced with tension. Colonel, you don't have jurisdiction. You're not on the defense roster. This isn't protocol. The colonel looked him in the eye. Neither is trying a man with no counsel. If this is a courtroom, then let it act like one. If it's a firing squad in disguise, then I'll take the bullet first. That line, it cracked the room open. What no one in that courtroom knew was this. The colonel wasn't just an officer. Years ago, he had sat in that same courtroom, in that same lonely chair, falsely accused, stripped of dignity, left to rot by the very institution he had dedicated his life to. He had survived, cleared his name, but never forgot the silence, the emptiness, the feeling of being utterly alone when the system turned its back. And on that day, when he heard of another soldier being fed to the wolves, without defense, without due process, he made a vow. Not this time. Not on my watch. And so, without orders, without approval, without fear, he came. What followed was not just a defense. It was a reckoning. The colonel dismantled the prosecution's case piece by piece, calling out inconsistencies, demanding accountability. He challenged the courtroom not just legally, but morally. He didn't speak like a lawyer. He spoke like a man who had lived in justice. When the final words were spoken and the gavel came down, the room didn't erupt in applause. It didn't need to. What settled in that space was far heavier. A silence filled with meaning. A silence that said, something rare just happened here. The young soldier, once moments away from conviction, walked free. His eyes didn't show joy, just quiet disbelief. He turned to the man beside him, the colonel who had appeared out of nowhere, and for a moment, neither spoke, because they didn't need to. The colonel nodded, just once, then picked up his cap, placed it back on his head, and walked out, not expecting recognition, not asking for gratitude. He had done what had to be done, and that was enough. He didn't do it for medals. He had plenty. He didn't do it for reputation. That was already secured. He did it because he remembered. He remembered what it felt like to be unheard, to be crushed under the weight of a system more interested in punishment than truth. He remembered the cold metal chair, the judge who wouldn't meet his eyes, the prosecutor who spoke louder because he could, and the silence from those who should have spoken up. And he swore, in the deepest corner of that darkness, that if he ever got the chance, he would never let another man sit in that chair alone. That promise, that silent vow, is what brought him back through those courtroom doors. Not protocol, not duty, principle. And maybe that's what true honor looks like. Not in salutes or ceremonies, but in the quiet moments when no one is watching, when you do the right thing, even if it costs you. Because real courage is walking into a room that's already decided someone's fate and sitting beside them anyway. Real courage is standing between a man and the system that's forgotten he's human. Real courage is knowing the rules and still choosing what's right over what's written. So ask yourself, in that room, at that moment, would you have walked in? Would you have sat down?